Patient rights and responsibilities. A new hospice protects and promotes the rights of our patients and patient representatives. The hospice patient and their representative have the right to be informed of their rights. Patient and representative rights. Exercise his or her rights as a patient of hospice. Receive information about the services covered under Medicare hospice benefit. Choose his or her hospice provider and attending physician. Be free from mistreatment, neglect, or verbal, mental, sexual, and physical abuse, including injuries of unknown source and misappropriation of patient property. Be informed of the process for acceptance, continued service, and eligibility determination. Have his or her property and person treated with respect, consideration, and recognition of the patient's dignity and individuality. Be free of discrimination or reprisal for exercising his or her rights, and refuse care or treatment. Information prior to and at admission. Receive a timely response to the request for hospice services. Receive information about criteria for admission and discharge, services, liability for payment and for services, and other information to make an informed decision about hospice. Receive appropriate, respectful, and professional hospice services without discrimination against age, race, creed, color, religion, sex, national origin, sexual preference, handicap, or source of payment. Advance directives. It is a new hospice's practice to ask about advance directives. Hospice does not deny services to persons who choose not to complete an advance directive or a healthcare power of attorney. It is the patient's right to receive verbal and written information concerning hospice's policies on advance directives, including a description of Indiana laws about advance directives. Language services. Receive verbal and written notice of the patient's rights and responsibilities, election statement, if applicable, and advance directives in a language and manner that is understandable. Receive interpretive services when the predominant language of the community is not spoken or understood. Services. Be given complete and current information about diagnosis, treatment, scope of services, and specific limitations, risks, and prognosis as required by the physician's legal duty to disclose and in a language and manner that is understandable. Be fully informed in advance about care and service to be provided, including the disciplines that furnish care and the frequency of visits, as well as any modifications to the plan of care. Participate in the development and periodic revision of the plan of care. Be informed of anticipated outcomes of care and any barriers in achieving the outcomes. Receive effective pain management and symptom control from hospice for the terminal illness and related conditions. Receive appropriate service and care without discrimination in accordance with physician orders, and be informed of hospice's 24-hour on-call service. Be able to identify visiting personnel members through agency-generated photo identification. Receive information from the physician and hospice regarding anticipated transfer of the patient's hospice care to another healthcare provider and/or termination of hospice services. Be informed of consequences of refusing service, care, or treatment. Voice grievances or complaints regarding treatment or care that is or fails to be furnished or lack of respect of property by anyone who is furnishing care and services on behalf of the hospice. Have grievance or complaints regarding treatment of care that is or fails to be furnished or lack of respect of property investigated. Be able to recommend changes in policies and procedures, personnel, or care and services. Charges. Receive an explanation of the patient's financial obligation for services prior to initiation of services. Receive a verbal and written notice of changes in the patient's payer source, coverage of services, and/or hospice charges within 15 work days of hospice's notification of changes. Receive information about any financial benefits to hospice when referred to an organization. Charges comparison. For a patient who is eligible for Medicare and/or Medicaid, hospice, Medicare, or Medicaid is considered payment in full for services and care related to the patient's terminal illness and related conditions. For a patient who has private insurance may cover all or part of the charges for hospice services. Hospice bills the insurance company. The patient is billed for the portion of charges not covered by insurance. For a patient who has no insurance, a self-pay patient is billed for hospice services. Privacy. Receive a copy of hospice's Notice of Privacy Practices. Be given data privacy and confidentiality of services and records with information available to the patient and authorized individuals involved in the patient's care or as otherwise provided by law in a third-party payment contract. Access the patient's protected health information for inspection and/or copying. Amend the patient's healthcare information. Restrict uses and disclosures of health information. And receive an accounting of health information disclosures. Patient and/or representative responsibilities. Name a person available to serve as primary caregiver or commit to establishing with hospice a plan to ensure caregiving needs are met. Provide accurate medical history and information to hospice. Provide accurate information for completion of a financial assessment. Inform hospice of any changes in the patient's medical condition. Inform hospice of new appointments with physicians or treatments and medications. Inform hospice of changes in persons providing care for the patient. Cooperate with hospice in efforts to plan and provide safe palliative care for the patient. Provide a safe environment in which hospice can deliver appropriate care. Inform hospice of plans to leave the service area so that preparations can be made to ensure continuity of care. Treat all persons providing hospice care with dignity and respect, refraining from use of profane and/or foul language, inappropriate gestures or touch, and threatening language or behavior. Inform hospice of any changes in insurance or financial status that may affect the patient's financial responsibility for hospice charges.